Hey guys, welcome to my channel, Sam Talks Books. Today we're going to be talking about all the books I gave 5 stars to. So I've read about 70 books this year, and I have about 23 books here that I gave 5 stars to, which I don't think is that bad. I think the majority of the books were 4 stars, which is still really good. However, we're going to talk about all the 5-star books I've got, and we're going to jump straight into it with the first one. First one here is Home Before Dark. I remember when this book got advertised? I remember when I heard about this book last year, and it said it's about this house that could be haunted and there could be spirits and all this paranormal stuff that's happened. I was so desperate to read it, and it felt like ages before I could get my hands on a copy. It actually released in America before it released here, and it's released here I think it's released here about 2-3 months ago. The moment I got it, I read it, I fell in love with the story, and immediately I think I was like not even halfway through, and I just knew it was going to be 5 stars. So we follow our character Maggie. Her dad has died and left her this house. It's not just an ordinary house. Her dad had wrote this book, which we get parts of his book during this, which is called The House of Horrors, and in his book he talks about all this haunting stuff that happened that made him leave. However, Maggie doesn't believe this, so she decides to go back to the house to renovate it, but also try and discover what really happened that night, and a lot of strange stuff starts happening. Towards the end of this was so good, I did not see it coming, and it's my first Riley Sager book that I had read at the time, and I loved every second of it. I want to read it again at some point. Riley Sager knows how to add twists and make you feel really creeped out and the hairs in the back of your neck stand up. So this is an amazing one. So I don't know if that music you can hear from that side or my partner in the kitchen, so if you do hear that, I apologise. Next book that I read is a recent read that I actually read last month, and Finley Donovan is killing it. This book voted by my fellow Booksagrams. They had choice between this one and one other book, and they voted for this one, so I decided to read it, and I'm so glad that I did, that they voted for it, because I loved it. We follow a character called Finley who is writing a crime novel. She's meeting her agent in this cafe, and they're talking about it, and they are overheard by a woman who thinks that Finley is a hit woman. She ends up leaving this note on the table with a name and a sum of 50,000, and she wants Finley to take out this person. It really goes from there. This book has a lot of comedy to it, but also has a really intense thriller side to it as well. I think the fact that the writer can build up that intense suspense and bring comedy into it and do both really well is so good and so done well. This book actually really reminds me of the TV show Dead to You, and I think that's another reason why I really loved it. But I'm really looking forward to reading the sequel to this one, but that doesn't come out until next year, so I've got a long time to wait, but this is so good. Next on my list is another one from last month, and that was In My Dreams I Held a Knife. I think I got like midway through this book and I was like, this feels like it could be a 5-star. By the end of it, I was just gobsmacked and shocked at the twist. I was like, shit. I remember sitting there like, oh my god, that would seriously happen. Like, you don't see the twist in this book coming. Author throws all these different bombs onto your lap, so you're literally sitting there like, damn. And I think that's one thing that about this book I liked, is I didn't guess who did it worse, nor did I see that twist at the end coming, and this was written really well. We follow a character called Jessica who's going back to college. They're having a school reunion. She wants to stand out and wants everyone to look at her like, wow, she's perfect. You know, the character is definitely flawed. There's a lot of things wrong with this character, like, but in a good way. She's a bit up herself, overconfident, a little bit of a psycho, and she's definitely selfish. But we also get to go back 10 years ago to when they were at college, before her friend, the girl who got murdered, part of their friend group, is alive still, and it leads up to that moment. This book deserves more than 5 stars, to be honest, and I can't wait to one day read this again. Definitely going to happen at some point. I will highly recommend this book if you love thrillers, or even if you're just getting into them. She's some smart sound effects, then I definitely recommend this. Next up on my list is a book that has got a lot of mixed reviews. Either people hate this book or they like it, but I really enjoyed it. But I do understand where people come from when they say they don't like it, and that is The Five Night by Riley Sager. And before anyone says anything, I don't care. I love this book. I literally felt like I was on the edge of my seat. I felt like it's fast paced. Yes, our main character is a little bit stupid at times, and I can definitely understand where people are coming from with that. Like, some of the stuff she does is just a bit like, really? But that never took away my enjoyment of reading this book. Will I still rate this a 5 stars if I was to read it again? Maybe. I'm not too sure, but I really enjoyed it, and I think I actually did work out who it was, and that still didn't really ruin it for me. But yeah, I gave this 5 stars. I don't regret it. I really loved it, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. I hope. Next one on the list is a book that has got a lot of mixed reviews as well. A lot of people said that this book was very reading fan fiction, so it made me really nervous going into it, and that is Serpent and Death. I'm so glad that I ignored those reviews and went into it and read this one. I literally love this book. Clearly I gave it 5 stars. We follow our main character Lou, who who is a witch, and then we have a character called Reed who hunts witches, kill them. Lou ends up doing something that comes to this point where her and Reed have to become married. This whole time Lou's trying to hide the fact that she is a witch because her now new husband is married to her and he has no idea that she's a witch, but she figures that being married to him will help her. She's trying to hide from someone. A lot of stuff happens in the book and I don't really want to ruin it, but I'm actually planning to read the sequel soon and I can't wait. On the back it's got bound as one to love, honour or burn. A witch and a witch hunter thrust into holy matrimony. There was only one way such a story could end: stake and a match. This book caught my attention straight away for the very first page, and if you have been interested in reading this but you're nervous about the reviews, I say just go for it because you might end up loving it. Next on my list is a favourite book, and this one is The Lost Apothecary. I heard about this book through Gabby Reed. She says it's fancy and I don't think it's fancy. This isn't historic fiction. I'll say up here if I'm right or not. So we follow these 2 different timelines. One, our main character, in the time she has this lost a prophecy shop, so she basically helps people get rid of their husbands. But then she starts helping this girl and there's this fatal mistakes that leads to a lot of trouble. And then in present day we follow Caroline, who goes mudlark, and then she finds this phase or vase, however you want to see it. Final? Yeah. Who knows? She finds this thing that basically has a mark on it and she starts looking into the history of it. So between the 2 timelines we get different secrets coming out. She the author did this so well where she revealed certain secrets in the right timeline. And one thing I'd say is that Karen's character I felt like really connected to, just because she was so fascinated with history, and I love history. I was getting so geeked out about certain scenes in this book, and I felt like I would be so excited if this was happening to me. I now want to go my book in because that'd be awesome, finding something from, I don't know, back in the 18th century or something that Henry VIII owned. I doubt that would happen, but that's not the point. This book is honestly amazing and I am so glad that I read it. It's an all-time favourite. So perfect. The Flood Plan. This was a super hyped up book for me now that it was ready to be picked up in Waterstones, and I went and got it and I read it straight away. This is a romance. So we follow a character called Anna and her boyfriend has committed suicide. They were both meant to go on this yacht trip together where they sail around a few different islands and they just had it all planned out, but he killed himself. They can't do that together anymore. Anna decides to go sailing and do the trip on her own, but she finds it really difficult, so she ends up hiring a guy called Kian to help her. Even though this book's a romance, it's a slow burn romance, and I say the romance that will happen to him near to the end. I feel like this book is a lot more to deal with Anna, I am saying her name right. Yeah, Anna dealing with learning to discover who she is without her fiance, how to deal with this grief, and you watch her go through anger and pain and so much stuff. But also our character Keen's got his own stuff as well that he goes through. It's honestly the most beautiful setting in the book I've ever read. There's some beautiful scenes that infill with whales. There's like a scene where there's these whales and it's just emotionally heartbreaking as well. It's a beautiful story. I remember finishing this book and turning the page like, wait, what, is that it? Oh, I love this book so much. I get emotional just thinking about some of the scenes in this book. But even if you're not too much into romance, this doesn't so focus on that you feel like you're reading romance. I feel it's like contemporary romance, if I was to be honest. It's a beautiful story. Next up on my list is another romance, and that is Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I've read all 3 of the Brown Sisters series and this one's my favourite, which I think isn't really the favourite for a lot of people. This book had me laughing so much. We follow a character called Chloe who has chronic pain, and one day she almost gets hit by a car and dies, and she starts to realise that she hasn't really lived. So she makes a list. She ends up moving out, and there we meet Red, who is the person who runs the building. So he lives in the building, I think he runs things, and they do not get along. He finds her very snobby, she finds him really rude. It kind of goes from there. He starts to help her with her list. Red has his own history, so trigger warning, there is a warning of abuse that Red suffered in his past, so just that's a trigger warning right there. But this is a really beautiful story. It's funny, there's some amazing moments, and whenever I listen to a song by Ella Henderson, Let's Go Home Together, I feel like she wrote this song for these two characters. If you've read this book, listen to that song and comment below if you think I'm right. It's perfect for it. Next up is a book that I think everybody's heard about and probably can agree with the rating 5 stars, and that's House in the Cerulean Sea. This book is like a warm, cozy hug. Oh my god, it's such a beautiful story. We follow a character called Linus who works as a social worker in the going to these houses with unusual children who have little powers like levitating bricks and that sort of thing. One day he gets told that he's going to go to this house here where there's these children that are thought to be really dangerous, and Linus is very wary of these children. Like, he's scared of them, he doesn't really like them, but the story is about finding love where you didn't expect it, not just like romantic love, but like love as in family and the love for these children, and he learns about them and he learns stuff about himself as well. Like, he grows as a person. I think it's just one of those beautiful stories. A lot of people say that there's a romance, which there is a tiny romance, but like it's not the main focus. I felt like it was right at the end. It is an incredible cozy read that I am so glad I read. Oh, it's so perfect. It reminds me, like, it's like one of those books that it could be raining outside, you could read this, it would just make you feel all warm. It says on the back, a magical island, a dangerous task, a burning secret. I want to read this again. I'm actually waiting for his new book under his Windward release. It comes out this month, I think on the 28th, and I can't wait to read that one. Next up is another book that's really popular at the time when it came out, and people were talking about it was really good, and I had to wait again for a while, and I finally got it, and that was You Deserve Each Other. I find this couple who are basically engaged, and neither of them want to get married anymore, but one does not want to call off the engagement because then she'll be left to pay for the bill. So they're trying to get each other to break out of each other, and it's funny. There's a lot of heartwarming moments. There's points where you're angry at both the characters. About this real life couple, it's like a second chance romance basically, and it felt so real. I never felt like it was like, oh, that wouldn't happen, that's over the top. This book it's just like written so well that you could see both sides of the story with these characters. Like, you'd be like, yeah, she's in the wrong, or yeah, he's in the wrong. You never decided for one character more than the other, and I really like that the author did that. On the top it's got, it's the wedding of the year for all the wrong reasons. This book made me laugh a lot. The book here, it was a very hyped up book, and I remember thinking, I'm not gonna like love this book as much as everyone else, and I just kept putting it off until one day I was like, nope, stop it, pick it up, read it, and that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. By now you probably know what this book's about, but on the back, reclusive Hollywood icon Evelyn Hugo is finally ready to tell the truth about her glamorous and scandalous life. But when she chooses unknown magazine reporter Monica Grant to write her story, no one is more astounded than Monica herself. From making her way to Los Angeles in the 1950s to leaving show business in the 80s, and of course the 7 husbands along the way, Evelyn unspools a tale of ruthless ambition, unexpected friendship, and a great forbidden love. But as Evelyn's story nears its conclusion, it becomes clear that her life intersects with Monica's own in tragic and irreversible ways. This book felt, by the end of it, like you really just read someone's actual real life biography. Evelyn Hugo felt so real by the end of this book, and I don't think I have much more to say about this, and it's incredible, and I want to read more from this author. I know Gabby Reed, who I'll link her channel down below, has read, I think, all of her books and has pretty much left most of them. I think there's a few that she didn't love, but most of them she has left. Next up is a book called The Shower. I saw this book being advertised on Facebook, and the cover kind of caught my eye. So it's like a reality show where boyfriends dump their girlfriends on TV. They leave them on a shelf, and they get a choice to stay on the show and win a lot of money. And if you win, your class is the keeper. Otherwise, you can choose to leave, and I think you get a little bit of money, so they can air your like being dumped on TV basically. And our main character, Amy, goes on the show, and she's against other women. This book's got a lot of feminist stuff about it. You know, the men on the show are kind of, assholes. But it was also like a lot of fun to read. One thing I could say that Helly did was the host. The way she wrote him felt so real. He kind of reminded me a little bit like of John Barrowman, who's very like out there and sort of attention and, you know, loud. Like, kind of reminded me of that. But all the female characters in this book, each single one of them had like a different personality that you could tell from the other. If you haven't read this book, I definitely recommend it because it is fun. I want to read this again at some point. I just don't know when, but I love this book. So next up is a book that I kind of bought based on the cover and the back, like the little bit that was in the back. Clearly that paid off because it was a 5-star, and that's 6 Crimson Crypt. Oh my god, I love this book. Look at the cover. How beautiful is that cover? Like the colours and everything about this book is so beautiful. I'm kind of sad that I didn't get a fairy edition though, because they're very dangerous. So I'm going to read from the back now, which is what caught my attention. Princess in Exile, a shape-shifting dragon, 6 enchanted cranes, and an unspeakable curse. It will take more than magic to find their way home. So this is like a YA fantasy fairy tale feel sort of book, and I remember going into it thinking, oh, is it going to feel like too young? But after like I think a chapter or two, I was so captivated by the writing and the characters and the story that was going on that I just fell in love with it. I love the story between the sister and her brothers and that bond and about not giving up, and I really can't wait for the sequel. Next up is 2 books, a sequel to the first one, obviously. And these books, some people have said to me like, you gave 5 stars, but it's like, I think that it's always about your own enjoyment, so you should never feel bad about it. And that is American Royals and American Royals Majesty. So I read that this, oh my word. So I read that this is like Princess's Diary meets Gossip Girl. Sold me straight away because I love both of those. I wasn't wrong because it was so much fun. We follow four characters. So we follow Beatrice, who's next in line to be queen, her younger sister, Princess Samantha, Samantha's best friend Nina, and Daphne, who used to date Samantha's twin brother, the Prince, Jefferson. Although sometimes I think that the personalities meshed just a tiny bit, I felt like the story was just so much fun. Just a real chill read, but also there's like a lot of drama in this book, which when I went into this book, that's what I was wanting, is drama. I mean, that's what a lot of people say when they went into this one, they wanted that, and you definitely get that. You know, you've got Beatrice, who's supposed to be picking her husband, and the husband she picks to marry, it happens to be the guy that Samantha likes, but Beatrice is in love with her bodyguard. And then you've got Nina, who likes Jefferson, but then you've got Daphne, who wants Jefferson back. So a lot of trouble. And then the sequel, which I thought wouldn't live up to it, was just as good, wrapped up really nicely. I'd love the third one, to be honest. Like, I wish there was a third one in the series, but I don't think it's going to be. These 2 were both 5 stars, really enjoyed them. I definitely read them again at some point. Next one is a horror thriller, which was, I think, the first horror book that I ever gave a 5 star to, and that was Near the Bone. When I first heard about this book, again, I think now it's from Gabby Reads, I thought Isolated in the Mountains sounds perfect. So we follow a character called Mattie, who lives in this cabin, isolated on the mountains with her husband, and something in the woods is watching them, and a lot of strange things start happening. I will have to give a content warning for this book. There's a lot of domestic abuse in this book, like it's quite a heavy thing in it, like, so if that's something that you really can't deal with, then I'd say stay away from this book. Otherwise, the intensity and suspense that this book builds up was so good. I remember feeling like I was on the edge of my seat and feeling like anxious that I was being watched. Like it really makes you on the edge of your seat. Christina really manages to pull that off well. I remember just reading this book like, and I wasn't able to put it down because my heart was like, and I wanted to know what was going to happen next, and I wasn't disappointed. The easiest 5 stars ever. So next one is The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. It was the second book I read by this author, and I didn't think this was going to be a 5 star at first because it was a little bit slow, but as I got more into it, I started realising the intensity of this book that it was having, and it started teaching me a lot with the drought and the dust things that were happening back then, and what it was like when the family went from Texas to go to California, LA, to just try and get work, and how they treated it was disgusting. But this book really broke my heart. I remember just bawling my eyes out in a numerous amount of scenes. The book is incredible. It's educational and it's heartbreaking, and it tells you the story of a woman who's need to survive for her and her children, and it's an incredible story. Next one on my list is another one by Kristen Hanna, and if it isn't obvious, it's The Nightingale. Sorry for my cat. Yeah. This is the first book I read by this author. Everyone said this book will break your heart. The ending will break your heart. Like, there were so many scenes in this book that broke my heart. I was wrecked by the end of this book. We follow 2 sisters in France, and Nazis have basically overtaken it, and World War II has started, and it shows you the journey that these sisters go on, how brave they are, and just, oh, the stuff they witness, the stuff they go through. So heartbreaking. I've never read a book in my life that's made me like full on ugly cry. This was actually the first book that ever made me break down and cry. It's so beautifully written, such an inspirational story, and a story I would never ever forget. But yeah, next one on my list is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This book was chosen by my mum and my partner to read, otherwise I'm going to put it off a lot longer. I was really nervous going into this book, and it is a really slow start, but I remember reading this and just falling so in love with the story, and you feel so lonely rereading this because Addie, if you don't know, she makes a deal, which means that no one can remember her. She can't even say her own name, so someone could see her and then they leave the room and come back in and they've completely forgotten who she is. And you generally feel like her loneliness reading this book. But you also get to meet this character called Henry, and this is a spoiler. When these two characters meet, Henry is the only person to ever remembered her, and we don't know why, and read and find out. But it's a beautiful story, and I would love a sequel, but we're not getting one. The ending was sad and hopeful and amazing, but you just want more, but in a good way. It's a really, really good book. I know there's a lot of people who were disappointed by it, but there's also a lot of people who absolutely loved it, and I understand why. It's incredible. Next one on my list is Hang in the Moon. This book is amazing. It's set in Seattle. Annie goes to go visit her best friend and surprise her, but her best friend's away, so instead she gets her brother to show her around. Her brother's always had a crush on her, so this romance starts, and there's a lot of funny moments in this book, cute moments. This book is just, it was so good. I've actually not read the first one in the series, Written in the Stars, because you can read them in whatever order you want. This is such an amazing, fun, laugh out loud, heart flutter sort of read, if that makes sense. So yeah, I love this book. Next one on my list is Circus of Wonders. We follow a character called Nella. It's around the Victorian time, and she's born with birthmarks. Her dad sells her to the circus, but she ends up learning to love herself, and she becomes a much better version of herself. The story is really powerful on what it was like in the Victorian days for people who were in the circus and how they were treated. And we actually follow two other characters point of views in this book, not just her. We follow Toby, who is the brother of the guy who owns the circus, and he's very sweet and caring. And then we follow Jasper, who owns the circus, and we don't like him because he's not nice. But this book is incredible, and its ending made me cry. It's a really emotional book that teaches you what it was like back then, and I really enjoyed this book. I knew when I finished it, like that ending topped up from 4 stars to 5 stars. It was a really good read. I don't remember every single detail from it, but I just remember knowing how I felt with this book. And this cover is so beautiful. Like, it's such a pretty cover. Next one on my list is The Writing of Hale. I actually can't remember who spoke about this book, and that's who I got this book from, like, recommendation. Like, they were talking about it, and I saw this cover, and it reminded me of The Labyrinth, and I was like, I need this book. And the story didn't sound that bad. So I saw it was cover buys again, and it ended up being a favourite. We follow a character called Fad. The town basically gets frozen over, and it's ordered that anyone who escapes have to be captured in prison. But she escapes, she doesn't get captured, and she has to like kind of change her looks because her people kind of look a certain way. Her best friend is murdered, but then a year later she discovers that he's alive, and in order for his freedom she has to help these people back to where her home is, where it's frozen, because they want to get, like, I think something to do with money in this mine, but a lot of weird things kind of happen inside the mine. And then obviously on the journey, nothing is as smooth in as, you know, any journey is. This book was just such an easy read. I didn't realise how fast I was getting through it and how much I was really enjoying it until I realised that it was like midnight and I had to go to bed. But this book has a sequel coming out, and I'm really excited because the ending of this book was so good and I didn't know what's going to happen. Such a good read. And the final book on my list is the best. I mean, I say that, but The Six of Crows. My favourite characters in the world. I heard this book talked about so many times. I was like, that's not my type of book. That's not my type of story. I'm not interested. And Meg with Books read it, liked it, and I was like, you know, maybe I'll give it a chance. And I was hooked. From chapter 2 onwards, I was hooked. There's so much drama, it's fast paced, the characters are incredible. They're the best written characters ever. They are so unbelievably well written, and the writing is so good. I'm currently writing a book, and if I could write like this, I'd be done. I'd be happy. I have read her Shadow and Bone. I've not read the other 2 yet because I read this one and Cookie Kingdom first, and Shadow and Bone is written well, but not compared to this. Like, the characters nowhere near as developed as this. This is so good. In fact, I finished it and I went straight onto the sequel, and I don't do that. I like to take a break, but I couldn't with this book. I really hope that we get this story in the Shadow and Bone series eventually. They have said that we're going to, and I can't wait because I need to see this played out on screen. These characters are amazing, and Kaz, he has my heart. I don't know what else to say other than this book is incredible. If you haven't read it, you should. So that's all of the books that I read that were 5 stars. There has been one more 5-star of a book that I've already read for October, but you'll know about that at the end of the month. I'm actually going to be doing my top favourite books, so it won't be all of these, but the books that mean the most to me, my favourite ever books, and that video will be coming soon, along with a possible reading vlog. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, it means so much to me, and hit that notification bell so you can get when I upload next. And thank you so much for watching. Bye!